The cyclical and sectorial narrative drivers that cause these assets to trend over vast periods of time are all aligning now. What was the reason why it happened in the 2000s? What is the catalyst now? It's the same thing. And these trends can last for such an elongated amount of time that they always go further than people predict, and they always last for longer than people predict. So unless these administrations and these institutions, these financial interests and these competing world hegemons get their books in order, then the gold trade is on for the foreseeable future. Hello and welcome back to the House of Trade. My name is Justin Banton and today I am joined with Safia. Hello, say hello.
Hiya.
Well, today we're going to be talking about the world of gold. It has been a tumultuous time. Gold reached an all-time high of 4,300, 4,400. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan are all talking about gold in 2026 being 5,000. And some of the other pundits are talking about gold at stratospheric levels of 10 to 24,000. But we're here to discuss what is all reality, because at the House of Trade, we like to give both perspectives, the normal perspective and the ambitious perspective. So, how are you today, Safia?
I'm okay. How are you doing? It's a bit chilly here.
I can imagine. I can't relate though, but I can imagine. Now, what do you think about gold at the moment?
What do I think about gold?
Yeah, what do you think about it?
I hear that the trades have been plummeting, actually.
Yeah, for sure. They definitely have been plummeting. It has not been auspicious for some, but for some who are able to trade both sides of it, it's been quite profitable. However, for those people who are probably in gold trades and has probably been buying at the top, it probably has been quite worrying. But if you believe in the long-term bull thesis, then you don't have anything to worry about. If you're looking at a long-term horizon over like 10, maybe even 5 years, then I don't think you have anything to worry about it. But if you're trading that intraday volatility, then yeah, you have some real big opportunities, but also some really big opportunities for loss, especially if you're trading on a leveraged product.
I have some questions for you.
Oh, okay. Do you have some questions for me? Wow, okay. I guess this is what an interview is.
Yeah. Do you think the bull market back on for gold and silver and precious metals generally is the bull market back on?
I think the bull market, I mean, when we got to 4,400, the RSIs and all of the indicators were super giddy, super overbought, and everyone was saying, hey, nothing goes up vertiginously forever, and there's probably going to be a precipitous fall at some point, given the probability distributions, and that makes complete sense. And that is what we saw. We saw gold pull back 5 to 10% in one day in some really illiquid, mysterious conditions, I'd say, because it happened during the dead of night where New York desks were abandoned and the Japanese market was highly illiquid. And gold selling off at that time, 5 to 10%, for me, is probably indicative of a distressed seller or buyer out there that needed some liquidity on their side. But I do actually think the balance of probabilities, the macro environment hasn't changed. The narrative hasn't changed. The governments around the world haven't started to discover some kind of fiscal prudentialness or some competencies and a lack of fiscal incontinence. So I think the narrative is there, solid for gold into 2026. And I don't think much has changed in the way of the ideology or the idiosyncratic backdrop, which is so propitious for gold at the moment. So in short, Personally, I'm bullish on gold, I'm bullish on silver, and I'm bullish on the precious metal complex generally.
And what is the driving bull market in precious metals?
What's the driving force? Well, I would say there are a few things that are lining up very well. Like the stars are all aligning for gold at the moment and for precious metals. So the number one, I'd say, is this whole debasement thesis with governments all around the world printing currencies, expanding their fiscal spending and their stimulus, with fiscal dominance taking over in the economy. I would say that that is the driving force behind the precious bull market. But we can't forget that the People's Bank of China are buying hand over fist. We don't really know how much they're buying because the opacity of the gold market is such that you can't really track flows in the way that you can track flows of other assets. So we don't really know how much they're buying, but we do know that they are buying. This raging bull market, there was one catalyst for it, in my opinion, and that was when the United States seized Russia's assets. When Russia invaded Ukraine, something that hitherto has been sacrosanct, which is essentially treasuries and assets denominated in other countries are normally off limits. It doesn't matter what happens. If you invade a country, you don't confiscate that country's assets. If you invade a country, you don't put sanctions on that country's assets. But as soon as America showed the world that, hey guys, we are willing to confiscate and sanction your assets and even start to talk about using Russian assets to rebuild Ukraine, governments around the world were like, hell no. I don't imagine Xi Jinping was saying hell no, but they were thinking, hell no, we can't have that. We have to divest out of these US treasuries and we have to have an asset that has zero counterparty risk. What is that asset? That asset's gold. Where do you hold gold? You hold it in your own vault. You can't
Yeah.
get it confiscated. That's what is behind this bull market. People know that governments are going to keep spending ad infinitum and that they're not going to find discipline anytime soon. And what do you do in those times of uncertainty? You buy gold. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. And USGS, the United States Geological Surveys, they put silver on the critical mineral list. So how is that not the most bullish thing in the history of silver since the Hunt brothers cornering it?
So you know what? That is a brilliant question. You took it right out of my mind, I swear, because that silver declaring, I don't think people really understand. I think that's a piece of news that actually flew under the radar. That's a very astute comment from you, actually, because that happening, the USGS, the Geological Survey, they come out every so often and they say, okay, this is what minerals we need for the future. This is what minerals we need for national security. And normally those kind of metals are like copper and things like that and the rare earth metals, which makes sense, right? But silver being put onto that list is, in my opinion, the most bullish and underpriced or mispriced development in this market in years since the Hunt brothers. You're essentially saying, as the government, we have for the last 2 decades been completely offside. We've been entirely wrong about the criticality of this resource for the importance of national security. Why is silver so important? Well, it goes down to the properties of silver. Silver is one of the most conductive metals out there. Electricity flows through it like knife through hot butter. And for this AI revolution, we're going to need copious amounts of silver in these chips to increase conductivity and to really make the infrastructure way more efficient. Not just that, but the military industrial complex uses tons and tons and tons of silver each year in their guidance systems for weapons, in their missiles, in their ICBMs, in all of a plethora of weaponry. So it's actually a strategic mineral. But why now? Why declare it critical? Well, most people don't know that just like your skin, there's a dermis layer and an epidermal layer. Well, when you're mining for silver, most of the silver is found in the epidermal layer of our earth, not in our skin, but in the earth's crust. That's where it's found. So that basically means most of the silver that we have now has already been found. In fact, some advocates are saying, and they're like geologists, not just pundits like me or someone talking about it, but they're saying we might have to eliminate silver from the periodic table. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's in such scarcity and short supply that people are actually now talking about silver disappearing altogether. So in short, yeah, it's super bullish for silver to be declared a critical mineral. And about time too, because it's been long overdue in my humble opinion.
I agree. I completely agree.
Man,
But
awesome.
unless you've been living under a rock, everyone in their aunt knows that China are amongst the largest accumulators of gold, so moving on from silver. But Justin, do you think that their true reserves are made public? I mean, gold is more opaque in terms of flows, but unlike oil, we can't track global shipping fleets. So what's the case for China having more than they say?
Well, man, yeah, it's a brilliant question. I don't think this question has got as much media attention as it should actually have. So, I mean, like you said, very correctly, we can't track the flows of gold. We don't know where it's going. We don't know who's buying it. We have to remember that China are actually the #1 producer of gold. Not only are they the biggest buyer in terms of central bank flows, they are actually the number one producer. So they produce so much gold internally, domestically, that we don't even know the true numbers. And that's a whole nother debate about the trustworthiness and the probity of Chinese economic numbers. That's been an issue for decades now. But we have to start questioning how much gold does China actually have? Because I truly believe that we are entering a new arms race. And this arms race isn't a Cold War era arms race. It's more an arms race based on accumulation of gold. Because what does that mean? The more gold you have in your country, the more stable your currency is deemed to be. Now, the Chinese have a grand strategy. The Chinese don't think on normal election cycles like we do in the West. 5 years, oh, a new prime minister. 4 years, oh, new orange guy in the White House. Oh, 5 years, oh, new rich billionaire in the White House. They think on cycles of centuries. You have to remember, Chinese are the oldest civilization in the world. They don't think in 5 years, they think in 100-year plans, right? Now,
Yeah.
they are thinking, we can't trust America. We can't trust our assets there. We want to internationalize our markets. We want people to trust us. We want the renminbi, which is the Chinese currency, to be used in international barter. We don't want the Americans, who are responsible for 25% of global trade, but 75% of global trade is settled in dollars, to have all of the domination of the market. So China's plan is to slowly accumulate in the background, and one day, in my opinion, say, hey guys, guess what? We got like 20,000 tons of this mother effer, okay? And we're going to use that to back our currency, and we're going to use that to really be the number one trading entity on the global stage. That's what I truly believe the game plan is with China.
Yeah. And there's a lot of distrust in the world when it comes to hoarding gold, especially the former allies of the US.
Yeah, super distrust. And do you blame them? I don't blame them. I
I
want to
don't blame
trust.
them.
I know, there you go. I don't blame them because they've been proven to be this untrustworthy. They've confiscated Russian assets. They've hiked up all of the tariffs on their so-called allies. I mean, like poor Lesotho in the middle of Africa, where Trump couldn't even put his finger on a map. What did they ever do to anyone? They got 150% tariff for just the sake of existing. So yeah, their allies no longer trust them. It's going in the way that people are allocating their capital. If you can't trust someone's country, why would you trust their financial assets? What you need to do is invest in an asset that is unconfiscatable, unsanctionable, unseizable, and all of the other uns you can think of. And that asset, for the last 7,000 years of human existence, is, yeah, you guessed it, gold.
Do you think that the gold trade is imperiled or the macro narrative still intact?
Me personally, look, the only way the gold narrative will ever become imperiled, in my opinion, is if these highly unlikely things happen. Number one, global central banks stop printing money. In my opinion, never going to happen. Number two, if treasuries and institutions around the world start developing, I don't know, this holy kind of sense of financial responsibility. Again, never going to happen. Number three, the war in Ukraine comes to an end tomorrow. In my opinion, highly unlikely. Number four, there's a peace treaty with China and America, and they no longer compete on terms of trade, military prowess, or technology. Again, in my opinion, never ever going to happen. So that's the only thing you have to really think about in terms of the gold trade being imperiled. For me, I think if you look back through time, from the 1970s, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, and in the early 2000s, and now again, these trades with gold, there's vast swathes of time where nothing happens. But then in a few years, everything happens, right? It's like that old state saying, I don't know if it's Dostoevsky or Tolstoy, he said, sometimes in years, nothing happens. But then in weeks, entire years happen. And that's how the gold trade is playing out. It's played out like that before. And although past is not always prologue, it probably is going to play like that before, because the cyclical and sectorial narrative drivers that cause these assets to trend over vast periods of time are all aligning now. What was the reason why it happened in the 2000s? Well, it was a global financial crisis. It was a distrust. What was the reason it happened in 2020s? Oh, it was a COVID pandemic when the government printed money ad nauseum. What is the catalyst now? It's the same thing. And these trends can last for such an elongated amount of time that they always go further than people predict, and they always last for longer than people predict. So unless these administrations and these institutions, these financial interests and these competing world hegemons get their books in order, then the gold trade is on for the foreseeable future. Myself, I would not be surprised if the stars align in 2030 that gold is trading at $10,000 an ounce. I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, there are many accomplished economists, way more accomplished than me and far more intelligent than my punditry allows for, that predict if the United States continues on this telemetry and this trajectory of fiscal incontinence, if they revalue gold at reserves in Fort Knox in the Federal Reserve, that gold's fair value on a trade-weighted basis, believe it or not, is $24,000 per ounce. Now, do you want to live in a world where gold is at $24,000 per ounce? If gold is at $24,000 per ounce, Safia, that probably means the British pound is trading like 50% lower than where it is now. If gold is at 24,000, that means the houses that you're trying to buy in your future are probably trading up 50% in value. So do you want to live in that world? Probably
Not
not.
really.
No, gold at $24,000 an ounce is probably going to be like a sign that we're going into like a global war, because gold is only going to be at those levels if there's a serious SHIT show going on in the world. And we don't want that. But hey, we are here at the House of Trade, and we're here to position for the future, for every eventuality. We hope for the best, but we prepare and we plan for the worst. So that is all there is to be said about the gold trade right now. And I'd like you to share, like, and subscribe. Thank you for joining us this week, Safia. We hope to see you again shortly, which I'm pretty sure. In fact, I'm certain we will. And yeah, ciao for now. Do you have any parting words for the audience?
No, just share, like, comment, subscribe,
Yeah.
and I'll
Buy
be back.
gold. Yeah, let's. No, I'm joking.
Bye, gold.
This is not for financial advice, by the way. We do not recommend any financial traders. This is purely for educational purposes only. No financial advice is given on this show. Contact a licensed broker. We are not professional traders. We are just advisors and commentators. That's it. But ciao for now. See you later.